From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Good morning, security gang. Welcome to another episode of the CyberHub Podcast. Monday morning. My timing here a bit off this morning, but thank you all for being here. Monday, February 24th, 2025. Packed show for all y'all today, including what I consider it to be and what is the most extensive crypto heist of our time. 1.5 billion stolen. We'll get into that. We'll get into some details around Salt Typhoon that are finally being released from Cisco Talos, and a whole lot more around China and some ransomware news and so much more on today's show. So don't go anywhere. And again, you can tell my morning here. If you heard some beeping there, that's my phone. The joy of having a live show. All right, let's get into the news today. But before we do, if you haven't subscribed to our podcast, CyberHubPodcast.com. This weekend, I couldn't really focus on cyber for a very good reason. Obviously, the news of the Bibas family and then the subsequent just desecration of the bodies of both baby Ariel and Kfir couldn't get me to really write anything cyber related. So this article on Saturday was open to everyone. It wasn't one that was exclusive for our subscribers, for our paid subscribers and supporters of the podcast. It was open for everyone around the tragedy of the Bibas family and so much more. If you have a moment, you want to learn a little bit more about that, you can go and check that out on our website. If you want to stick to cyber, all the cyber stuff you can tell is right under there. So go check that out. Let's get into this morning's show, y'all. But before we do that, let's get into a coffee cup cheers. I've got my double espresso this morning. Coffee cup cheers, y'all. So ByBit on Friday said a cyber attack allowed attackers to steal roughly $1.5 billion worth of digital currency. ByBit claims to have 60 million users and does more than 36 billion in daily trading volume, folks. They say a sophisticated cyber attack altered the smart contract logic and masked the signing interface, enabling the attacker to gain control of the Ethereum cold wallet. As a result, 400,000 Ethereum and ST Ethereum worth more than $1.5 billion were transferred to an unidentified address. And that's the key there. It's an unidentified address. The company said the potential vulnerability in the user interface of the safe.global platform may have been exploited during the transaction process, but it has not provided technical details. The company said the news of the hack led to a surge in withdrawal requests, but cryptocurrency holdings with the exchange were safe despite possible delays in processing withdrawals. Ben Zhao, the CEO of ByBit, said the exchange would remain solvent even if the stolen crypto funds were not recovered. ByBit is solvent even if he said, okay, this is his statement here. He noted this on X. ByBit is solvent if the hack loss is not recovered. All of the client's assets are one-to-one backed. We can cover the losses. That's really interesting to understand how they do that. So my understanding is that's not really possible, but maybe ByBit has something that's there. ByBit claims to have more than enough assets to cover the loss, with AUM exceeding 20 billion, and said it would use a bridge loan if necessary to ensure the availability of user funds. So again, we'll see how this adds up. We've seen stories like this before, obviously. According to Chain Analysis, a cryptocurrency criminal activity surged in 2024, marking the fifth year in the past decade where losses exceeded $1 billion, with 2.2 billion stolen just last year. This is 1.5 billion. So you're already going to exceed last year this year. It's 1.5 billion. Look, here's the thing about these crypto companies. If you don't have a dedicated security team, you have no business taking people's money. And again, this goes, and someone will obviously say, what about compliance and regulation would force them to do it? I've yet to see compliance or regulation stop any sort of cyber breach, even in the highly regulated industries like banking, healthcare, manufacturing, energy, or otherwise. Regulations don't bring about security. Customer capital movement does. Just putting that out there. Apple bends the knee in the UK. So we talked about the story briefly last week on the show. Apple got a request for an advanced data protection for a secret order from the UK government, demanding Apple create a backdoor that would provide access to the encrypted data of any Apple user worldwide. Apple, for their end, said we will no longer do that in the UK alone, and that will no longer be available as of today. Today was Friday of last week. So the UK government, again, just showing utmost lack of respect to people's privacy. So when you own a phone and you own a device, that's your device. It's private. No one has a right to get to it. The UK government wanting a backdoor in a process where they're not really sharing it with the public, sorry, causes me to really believe what Vice President Vance said at the Munich Security Conference just a few weeks ago, that maybe Europe is losing its touch with what freedom of speech is altogether. And so now people's privacy and Apple bending the knee is just that. Apple should have just withdrawn from the market. They should have just said, we're not going to comply, sue us, so be it. We'll see you in court. And they should have litigated this thing. They should have fought it. Instead, they're bending the knee to the government, giving them access to people's private stored communication on their devices. And I know people will argue national security. If it's a national security concern, you can go to a judge and you can get a warrant for it. The fact that they wanted it also worldwide just tells you I don't want the Brits snooping on my stuff. And if they did, I'd leave Apple faster than I came in. So that's for sure. So there's that this morning to deal with it. Researchers at Cisco's threat intel unit are saying that Salt Typhoon successfully broke into U.S. telcos via old and patched vulnerabilities that have stolen login credentials and basically used the living off the land tactics. Now, if you recall, the living off the land tactics really sit well with the Chinese. There was arguments around attribution and SolarWinds, where the Russians had some access, but we definitely know the Chinese had some other ones. And the Chinese love living off the land types of attacks. This new report says that at least one of those incidents, the Salt Typhoon group exploited CVE 2018-0171, which is a remote code execution vulnerability in the smart install feature. The flaw was patched back in 2018, but unpatched legacy systems still remained at risk. While there have been reports of Salt Typhoon abusing other Cisco vulnerabilities, the Thales researchers say they have not yet found evidence confirming additional exploits. The company's still urging customers to patch the following CVEs: 2018-0171, 2023-201-9 and 202-73, and 2024-203-9. Salt Typhoon has compromised core network infrastructure across multiple telecom firms. They've used a mix of credential theft, living off the land tactics, and infrastructure pivoting to evade detection. The new Cisco Thales documentation makes it clear that Salt Typhoon hackers primarily gained access to networking equipment using valid login credentials. There you have it. There's that. In numerous instances, the threat actor exfiltrated device configuration, often over TP or FTP. These configurations often contain sensitive authentication material like an SNMP read-write community string or local accounts with weak password encryption types in use. The weak encryption password type would allow an attacker to trivially decrypt the password itself offline without having to use a lot of computing. So they were using, the standard or, some 128 AES 128 rather than 256. In some of those instances, Thales observed the attackers pivoting between a compromised telecom network, using one company's infrastructure as a jumping point to attack another, trying to build that trust between the networks, which does exist because there's shared communication and shared assets between the networks in order to hack additional networks. So we see that there as well. So the threat actor also pivoted from one compromised device operated by one telecom to a target device in another telecom. They also added that we believe that the device associated with the initial telecom was merely used as a hop point and not the intended final target in several of those instances. Some of those hop points were also used as a first hop or outbound data exfil operations. So again, very, very, very sophisticated by Salt Typhoon. We talk about Salt Typhoon. Well, the Chinese government, for the first time, are pinning a cyber attack at the country's Northwestern Polytechnical University to the NSA. And so China doesn't rarely admit to attacks on them. And they typically don't really make those public, obviously, because the show is primarily focused on what we see outside, not because we want to, but because that's what's typically publicly available. However, here, China's actually breaking protocol. So back in September of 2022, China's National Computer Virus Emergency Response Center accused the NSA of tens of thousands of cyber attacks against networks in the country and infiltrating the Northwestern Polytechnical University. A year later, they linked the malware used in the April 2022 attack against the Aerospace and Defense Institution to the NSA, and that it had uncovered the identity of the attackers. However, what was not the only Chinese entity to blame for the NSA for Northwestern Polytechnical hack, and Australia-based researchers Lena Lau had dived into multiple reports to better understand the evidence behind the attribution. So China tracks the threat actor as APTC-40, which Lau suggested is linked to the notorious Equation Group. According to the analyzed reports, the NSA Tailored Access Operations Division targeted the university for data theft and espionage, deploying at least 41 malware strains and performing hands-on keyboard operations. Those hands-on keyboard operations performed during weekdays, but not on U.S. national holidays like Memorial Day or Independence Day, pointed to U.S. attackers, the same as the use of keyboards with American English layout with devices with English language operating systems and applications. So, I mean, they're using the kind of what 90% of the world uses. Overall, the Chinese agencies and firms linked 41 malware families and tools to the NSA, including 16 consistent with the TAO toolkit exposed by shadow brokers. In total, 23 of the uncovered tools had around 97% similarity to the shadow broker leak. There were man-in-the-middle attacks or phishing emails. The Fox Acid zero-day vulnerability attack platform was also used in the attack, along with Island for manual exploitation of the Solaris systems, and Second Date espionage framework, which supports traffic hijacking, network eavesdropping, and code injection. For long-term persistence, the attackers also used tools like Second Date No Pen Flame Spray, Cunning Heretics, and Stoic Surgeon, legitimate credentials for firewalls, hijacked software update mechanisms, and stolen SSH telnet and our login passwords and compromised routers to manipulate those traffics. So good job to the NSA. If you're really behind it, hats off to you. Thank you so much. Keep driving the Chinese crazy. On behalf of all of us here in America, we thank you. The Black Basta ransomware group has gone dark. Black Basta is a Russian-speaking ransomware as a service operation started back in April of 2022. They were surging in the vacuum left by Conti. They're kind of believed that Conti dismembered. Some people came back as Black Basta, which is true. But now the activity's fallen off a cliff. And according to cyber intelligence firm ProDaft, its campaign steadily declined in the months following the summer of 2024, with its last known operation coming in December of last year. Sometimes threat actors group go quiet because they're facing scrutiny, but here there was a leak of chats between the Black Basta, and apparently there's some unhappy people in the cyber group. The sentiment was shared by an individual associated with both Black Basta and CACBot, who goes by the nom de Guerre Cortez. Black Basta has made frequent use of CACBot, but Cortez appears to have been excluded himself, and by extension, the CACBot botnet from those attacks. So they're worried about them attacking actual Russian organizations in their own country. The group hasn't yet faced any blowback from Russian law enforcement, but people don't want to mess with it. The attacks against Russian banks may have been a symptom of a deeper issue, including the fact that they want to kind of hit at it. So a lot of unhappiness there. Is Black Basta gone? Is that the end of it? Nope, not really. They'll come back. The group will regroup. The factions will go about their own way. They'll come up under a new name, but you'll see the same tools, techniques, and procedures take place here real soon. Don't let this be anything but a temporary delay in what will likely be another lucrative cybercrime opportunity. Hundreds of freelance software developers ranging from junior to highly experienced professionals are being targeted and infected with North Korean malware over the past year, according to a report from ESAT. They're tracking the campaign as deceptive development. As part of the attack since early 2024, the threat actors relied on fake personas, copied profiles to pose as software development recruiters, and convinced victims into downloading software projects that did contain malware. They've then like North Korea uses this stuff all the time. So here's a few things about this. When you take a look at what we've covered thus far in the show, Crypto. You got to make sure you take security seriously. Apple giving up on privacy, at least in the UK, right? Not very good news. And then we see kind of like the Salt Typhoon, China, Black Basta ransomware falling apart. But the North Korean style of attack is very, very hard to deflect, specifically because it entails freelancers or people looking for a job or potentially being approached for jobs, which lays a very kind of gray area for cybersecurity practitioners. How do you train for it? How do you tell someone, tell me someone contacted you because to offer you a job and you're not sure if it's the right thing, right? Like there's an aspect to there that causes discomfort, and the North Koreans have actually hit this right on the nose. Whether you like it or not, they've hit it right on the nose. They're going after people who are looking for jobs. They're creating fake profiles of companies that hire these types of developers. They're getting them to go through what seems to be a legitimate interview process. And then at the end of it, they're getting them to download malware, and then they're taking over those devices or other projects that they're working on and using those as a way to get into other organizations. It's absolutely brilliant. Whether you like it or not, it's absolutely brilliant. ESET, talking about this campaign, identified two different versions of what they call Beaver Trail malware, one in JavaScript and one in Qt. They found similar capabilities like exfiltration of sensitive information from Chrome and Edge. There were many others backdoors that they were putting in. So something to keep in mind, something to maybe share, maybe offering some anonymous help, something along those lines. I'm still thinking about how do you solve for this. So once I come up with something, I'll put it on our website at cyberhubpodcast.com. You can go check it out there. Here we go. Let's get into the last part of the show here before we're out of time. Palo Alto is having a second PAN-OS vulnerability patched in February. This one being exploited in the wild to actually hack its firewalls. The first one came on February 12th. Palo Alto published 10 new security advisories informing customers about the availability of patches for various vulnerabilities. One of them was CVE 2025-0108. We're now getting confirmed exploitation of CVE 2024-90474 patched together. They lead to remote code execution, so you want to make sure you get those patched up. Something about data embassies makes me really, really uneasy. So smaller nations, in an effort to create resiliency, are looking to create data embassies in foreign nations, bigger nations with that they're friendly with, where they would maintain jurisdiction over that area so the nation state couldn't attack it, but that's where they would have backup of their nation's data in the event something happens there, like a cyber attack, a natural disaster, or another catastrophe. It's a very interesting approach designed to protect critical sovereign data from external cyber and physical threats. Typically, smaller countries look to external data havens as a hedge against disaster. The Estonian government inked an agreement with Luxembourg to host the former Soviet Republic's data in a facility that should be inviolable and thus exempt from search, requisition, attachment, or execution. And Monaco, a nation occupying about 2 square kilometers and worried about natural disaster, did a similar agreement with Luxembourg back in 2022. India has opened negotiations with several countries, including Singapore and the UAE, to host those nations' data in facilities located in special economic zones like the Gujarat International Finance Tech City, often referred to as Gift City. So all in all, you're seeing different laws and different things happening there. Very, very interesting. I'd love to get your thoughts on this. I'm going to start exploring this as well, and we'll see what comes out of this. Is this a real thing? And finally, CrowdStrike's CISO, Sean Henry, will be retiring from his current role at the end of next month, according to a regulatory filing with the SEC. The decision was mutually agreed upon on February 14th. Henry will transition to executive advisor to the CEO. 4 decades in security, Sean is retiring from his full-time role as part of the planned transition and will remain an integral part of CrowdStrike as executive advisor to the CEO, focused on cybersecurity advocacy and resilience. Henry is one of the longest-serving executives at CrowdStrike. He founded the company's incident response and professional services practice, so he'll be retiring from CrowdStrike, and he also helped lead them after the July incident last year. So there's that. Congratulations on your retirement, Sean. I hope you catch up on all the sleep you've missed on over 40 years. That's it for our show this morning. We'll be back tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern, live with all the latest and greatest. Until then, please make sure to subscribe, follow, share, like, comment. If you have any stories, let us know through cyberhubpodcast.com. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great week. And most importantly, y'all, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.